Your name at the top of his list, and the Statue of Liberty started shaking her fist, and the eagle will fly, and it's gonna be here when you hear Mother Freedom start ringing her bell, and it'll feel like the whole wide world is raining down on you.
Good afternoon, Philadelphia. Welcome back to the Conservative Voice on WWDB AM 860. We're here for the second hour, and this is your host, Gary Heasley, in the studio, and I'm joined today by Mina Quarles of Flip Philly Red. Mina, thanks for being here today again. Always a pleasure to have you. And Felice Fine, who is a state Republican committee member and an area chair and does a lot of work in a lot of ways to keep moving this republic back on track. Thanks for being with us today, Felice.
My pleasure.
So this hour, we're going to talk about one of the magic words, the magic words that get voters to set aside their family's interests, their nation's interests, their economic interests, any of their interests, and just vote blindly on one issue. And that issue in this case is abortion. So we're going to be joined by Chris Pushaw, who is the president of the Pro-Life Union of Greater Philadelphia. And we're going to talk about, what exactly is happening in the pro-life movement now, and then what's coming, and we'll talk a little bit about what happened in Ohio, because we've touched on that before on the show, but it's an important marker. But what's coming is the abortion enthusiast industry continues to fight to make abortion at any stage, at any date, a right that is constitutionally protected. So with that, Chris Pushaw, thank you for joining us on the Conservative Voice.
Thanks for having me on, Gary.
Yeah, glad to have you, and it's nice to have you in the studio. That always makes it nice when we can have somebody here. So you're with the Pro-Life Union of Greater Philadelphia.
That's right.
And tell us more about that. So what is that?
So the Pro-Life Union of Greater Philadelphia, we're the largest pro-life organization in the Delaware Valley. Mm-hmm. We have basically a three-pronged approach. One is to witness to the sanctity of life through our sidewalk advocacy program. So we will have sidewalk counselors stationed at Planned Parenthood, at 12th and Locust, and the Apple Tree Clinic in Chinatown. And then we coordinate with different counselors across the 5-county region. That kind of is, to use a legal term, the last clear chance for a lot of these women, and certainly their babies that they're carrying. And what we try to do is just to show them an alternative, that abortion is not the only choice, and to redirect them to pregnancy resource centers. So even in Center City, Philadelphia, 12th and Locust, there's a pregnancy resource center literally down the street. We just had a group from St. Louis, Coalition Life, came in, and they were showing us different ways to kind of affect those turnarounds and those saves. The other way we help is, one of the, what I think are sort of the empty critiques of the pro-life movement is that, well, you care about the child up until delivery, and then you just sort of abandon the child and the mother. Well, in reality, we do a lot to walk with those mothers and those children and to support them, not only during their pregnancy, but post-delivery. We have a maternity home called Guiding Star Ministries, which is in the Germantown section of Philadelphia. Mm-hmm. So we house up to 8 women who are in crisis. We vet them. But basically, they can stay there. It's not just a shelter. It truly is a home. We offer them counseling, financial literacy, and just something that they have a warm, safe space, which I know is an overused term, in which to bring their child into the world, and up to a year afterward. And then we actually we enrolled a woman. We're helping her with her first month's rent, who's getting on her feet and trying to become more self-sufficient. We also have pregnancy resource centers like Alpha Care, which actually kind of an interesting blessing. It took over the space at the old Kermit Gosnell Clinic. Kermit Gosnell, who is a site, just a chamber of horrors and a site of so many deaths, is now a site where Brooke Neerman is their executive director. Really, a lot of women are enabled to make the choice for life there. And finally, we have an education component. So we just finished our 4th annual March for Life, which began with a mass at the Basilica. In Philadelphia. We had Father Dennis Gill speak. We then marched in the Basilica past the Apple Tree Clinic, and then we gave a rally on Independence Hall, fittingly. So we're in the shadow of the birthplace of liberty. We had a bunch of great speakers, one from the National Catholic Bioethics Center, one from Students for Life, and yours truly. And we also had counter protesters. I know that, not necessarily a warm up for tomorrow, but we certainly had an angry phalanx. And it was interesting when I got up to speak because I didn't know if I was going to be able to have the presence of mind to speak and just make sense of everything. And I think the Holy Spirit was there, drowned them out. And I was able to kind of witness for that. So that's part of our educational program. We also do conferences. I gave a talk on Evangelium Vitae, which is the papal encyclical, The Gospel of Life. That's coming up on its 30th year for a parish in Montgomery County. And really we work, it's not so much what we do, it's how we do it. So we work through what we call our associate member organizations. So essentially the three different pillars I sketched out, we work through them. So there are different AMOs, as we call them, like the Bioethics Center, that are educational AMOs. We create a pod where they can have mutual reinforcement and feedback. We do similar pods for our maternity homes and our pregnancy resource centers, and of course, our sidewalk advocacy. We were founded actually over 50 years ago. John Stanton was our patriarch. He was an OG Project Rescue guy. He was thrown in jail for his witness. This was obviously before the FACE Act. Just today, my friend Mark Houck was outside Planned Parenthood. I'm pretty new to the pro-life union, but I ran his campaign last year against Brian Fitzpatrick. Oh. So we have a lot of different inflection points throughout the region for this issue.
So it's interesting how this has evolved over time from something that was supposed to be safe, legal, and rare to something that's not that at all. So looking at the Guttmacher a survey from 2023, it was over 1 million abortions were performed in the United States, 1,026,000 to 1,035,000, something like that, were performed in the U.S. Within the healthcare system. So that is not rare. No. That's not safe, legal, and rare. That's common, and it's showing a significant increase. So if you go back to 2020, that's like a 20%, like a 10%, 10 or 11% increase.
Correct.
Over that time period. So obviously, as our population grows, or as this becomes more cemented in our culture, it's not going away. So of the story in Ohio. And in Ohio, for those that don't know, Ohio is a 3R state, as I call it, right? So Republican House, Senate, and governor. And so outsiders came in and took advantage of Ohio's laws that allow you to put a constitutional amendment on the ballot. And they got on the ballot an amendment to make abortion, with some very, very extraordinary language, a constitutional right. Now, the thing about the language I think that's extraordinary is they set it up where if a child's going to have an abortion, they don't have to have parental permission. And if you read the language the way I read it when it was being voted on, I think it's going to open the door to a lot more things happening without parents being involved. I think it could end up in gender, transitions and so on, without parents being involved for minors, which is sort of shocking.
Yeah.
But that's where it is. And so I'm wondering, is that coming to Pennsylvania?
Well, in a sense, it already has. And I think a lot of what you were talking about in terms of the uptick in the abortion rate is because of the Dobbs decision, which came down in 2023. And I think that was a decision that I think on both sides the country was just not ready for, as much as pro-lifers preyed on that, and as much of a seismic moment as it was, and I think it was a correctly decided constitutional issue. You see how the abortion language and the propaganda has been twisted, which is now it's very prevalent to say, well, abortion is health care. But ironically, prior to Dobbs, and to your question, there was a pending constitutional amendment in Pennsylvania that passed a bicameral majority declaring, it basically codified Dobbs before Dobbs and said there is no fundamental right to abortion to be found anywhere in the Pennsylvania Constitution. Now, unfortunately, during the intercession and with the ascendance of losing the bicameral majority, that kind of died on the vine. What currently is under attack, we still have a majority in the Senate. Mm-hmm. I used to run the Pennsylvania Pro-Life Federation, so some of this is a little bit of a hazy memory, but we're also part of the Pennsylvania Pro-Life Working Group in the State Assembly. that's chaired by Marla Brown. But what's currently under attack is the Abortion Control Act in Pennsylvania, which was basically the precursor to the Casey case, Planned Parenthood versus Casey, which examined, at the time, were common sense restrictions on abortion while recognizing the quote-unquote core right up to 24 weeks. What was actually constitutionally upheld were things like 24-hour waiting periods, parental notification, and so on and so forth. So the Abortion Control Act had a bunch, and principally speaking, informed consent on the tack of abortion as health care, which I think basically is a contradiction in terms. But the informed consent, what they're trying to overhaul, that at the time, the Abortion Control Act, that was genuine informed consent. The mother was apprised of, first of all, the risks of infertility, of suicidal ideation, of infertility, so on and so forth. Now, if the latest iteration is correct, informed consent is presumed because of the prevalence of the issue, which to me makes a mockery of the abortion as healthcare as well as basic medical ethics.
Sure.
Wow.
And the quick rejoinder, I said this from the stage Saturday. My brother's a constitutional law professor out of Pepperdine. He put it very simply. He said, abortion is not healthcare because pregnancy isn't a disease. It is not an illness. Pregnancy is actually a sign that a woman's reproductive system is functioning perfectly. My former education director at the Pro-Life Union wrote that. And it's interesting, you get so lost in the sauce of what used to be safe, legal, and rare that just these basic axiomatic, biological, ethical, moral principles get shelved. So yeah, there is a fight, Gary, and there's also other inroads being made to dismantle that right. And as you say, they often choose deliberately amorphous language, as in Ohio, to invite, I would say, other bastardizations of the abortion decision.
In Ohio, when they ran that, they advertised it as, in many cases, an economic issue. They said literally there were billboards up saying, "Vote yes on issue 1 to keep jobs in Ohio." People had no idea what they were signing up for. They had no idea what they were signing off on, and so it was shocking to people after the fact. And I talked to some who voted for it, and then after the fact they said, "What? That's not what I vote. I would never vote for that." They did. So there was a lot of subterfuge, and in that particular case, I think the budget to get that battle won was $50 million. They got it done for 35. So the forces of the abortion enthusiast industry came out with $50 million pledged to fight that, and they got it done. It had $15 million left for the next option. There was really no significant counter presence. There was some light messaging in some specific places, but the truth is there was really no significant counter movement. And so they ran, again, there was some. It just didn't amount to enough to make a difference. It wasn't even a speed bump. So that's a question that I think, we all have to think about is how does that happen where one side on this issue has unlimited resources and the other side seems to have a trouble getting off the starting line?
Yeah, I think some of it, the challenge, and it's interesting you bring that up. When I was the executive director for the Federation, our colleagues, we kind of saw the writing on the wall in the wake of Dobbs, that they were these so-called constitutional referendums, which again have the pretense of democratic principles and freedom and liberty. Simple majority, the people are making this law. But as you said, it was a Trojan horse. The way they did it, it was this two-tiered approach, and it was all vested in, jobs, liberty, overhauling the machinery of how these become legally enshrined in the Constitution. And then the two-step is, then they do the blitzkrieg, no pun intended, this massive PR campaign. Women's lives will be threatened. Abortion is, we need to keep these rights, sacrosanct. And that's how it gets. And they also know the sweet spot. They knew that this also happened in Kansas. It happened in Kentucky. And I heard war stories from all of my colleagues at the time. And they knew exactly how to spend the money, and they're very good. They know how to deploy it very strategically, and they know what words to use for, I think, the mushy middle voter. And Ohio was as you said, was a 3R state. It was a pro-life stronghold for years.
Yes.
But the way they flip it is now, because of this, women's lives will be harmed. and abortion is health care, when you take away a right, then that gets caught up in the popular imagination. Well, this has to be constitutionally infirm if you're threatening rights. Right. And if you, as I always say, if you completely reject the personhood of the child, and that every time an abortion is performed, someone loses their life, then all of that makes sense. Mm-hmm. But that's a gigantic premise to put aside.
But that is the premise, right? The inconvenient clump of cells, right? It is, when you think about something that's 24 weeks along, that's not really a clump of cells. But right. If you talk, especially to the younger women, it seems, about this issue, they believe that there is nothing there but some tissue that's got no purpose or meaning or spark. And that was one of the greatest propaganda moves maybe ever, was doing that. And the messaging, to your point, it started out as this safe, legal, and rare. Then it became, well, it's pro-choice. We just want you to have a choice. Yeah. Then it became healthcare. It's no different than, getting a simple procedure or something. Well, it is quite a bit different. But this manipulation of the media has been incredibly effective. The messaging has been incredibly on point. In fact, there's a group called Shout Your Abortion that it's incredible, the things that they have on their website. But they say right up front that their mission is to normalize abortion and make it more predominant. I mean, they are proactively working very hard. It's a well-funded organization. It appears anyway, and they're working very, very hard to make this something that happens more often. They're dedicated to it. Now, there are a couple of reasons why I guess that is. One is you want the supply chain, right? They need the tissues and fluids, which go into a lot of different purposes. But what would make you that dedicated? We've got a clip. Tyler, if you would please, let's play the clip 2 with Martha Plimpton.
Now, Seattle has some particular significance for me for lots of reasons. I have got a lot of family here, some of whom are here in the audience tonight. I also had my first abortion at the Seattle Planned Parenthood. Yay! Notice I said first. And I don't want you guys to feel insecure. It was my best one. Heads and tails above the rest. If I could Yelp review it, I totally would. And if that doctor's here tonight, I don't remember you at all. I was 19. But I thank you nonetheless.
When I heard that, so this hasn't been an issue that I've been particularly interested in, right? I mean, I spend time on a bunch of issues, economics and whatever. And when I heard that, I was astonished. And that's when I stopped saying pro-choice or pro-abortion or whatever, and just started saying abortion enthusiast. It wasn't just what she said. This Martha Plimpton, who was an actress in the movie called The Goonies back in the day, so she's some minor celebrity. It was the reaction from the crowd, right. The laughter and the cheering in the crowd.
Disgusting.
And I thought, I don't understand. How can this be something that's not just sort of quietly happening, but you're celebrating it? You're having conferences to promote it. It's not just an industry, but it's an enthusiast community. And the fact is, that's what it is.
Yeah, and I think, Gary, to your point, I knew that Martha Plimpton had, quote unquote, celebrated her abortion. I'd never heard that full clip, but that really encapsulates the mindset of what we're up against and the mentality. And as I said, there were very vigorous protesters Saturday. One thing that I've learned in 25 years of being in this movement is that I think part of the problem is it's not enough that evil exists in the world, but it has to masquerade as good. And I think the pro-abortion or abortion enthusiasts, they are desperate to make what is something that is intrinsically evil and morally wrong and dangerous. I mean, chemical abortion, which we can get to, is a dangerous procedure. Mm-hmm. It is not within the bounds of sound medical practice, particularly in its currently deregulated state. But I think they're very desperate to make it seem like a positive good for women and an option. And as you said, it's not just what Martha Plimpton, I mean, first of all, I'm very puzzled by this was my best one ever. I mean, your first reaction is best for who? Like, okay, you survived it. It certainly wasn't best for your child. And if you had multiple ones, that also puts the lie to this is safe, legal, and rare. No, this is something to be enjoyed and celebrated now. And I will say this, everyone knows the Abby Johnson story and Unplanned. I had read the book. I'd never seen her talk. And when I was at the Federation, I had the privilege of seeing her twice. And she was she worked at Planned Parenthood. She actually, her conversion moment, she was more a propagandist and a groomer in her own words. But she had to assist in an abortion. They were shorthanded. And when that grisly, visceral reality, which this is what I'm actually a part of, that's what flipped it for her. And by that time, I had listened to thousands of pro-life talks. I was just transfixed. But her theory is that really we're going back to Old Testament, child sacrifice, worshiping Baal and Moloch stuff. That there's obviously a power over life and death, right? And that one of the young gentleman from Coalition Life said this. He said, the people that are doing this, there is some form of, I don't want to get religious, but demonic possession, or you literally can sense the presence of evil outside some of these centers. And it is about that power, that this was my abortion and I'm celebrating it and I don't care about the collateral damage. She's certainly not eulogizing her child. I mean, a lot of women deal with that trauma, which is wildly undervoiced and underexposed. But that's the only thing I can attribute it to, Gary. It shifted from a basically a negative right, which is not to have a child, to something that I want to celebrate and activate and make part of my constitutional portfolio of constitutional rights.
Yeah, Martha Plimpton actually wears a shirt in one of the pictures that she's got on her social media that has abortion all over it. Just the word abortion as decorating her shirt. I mean, she is out there championing it. And, we've talked about this before, that I think we're at about 65 million abortions now in this country, roughly. Is that about right?
Over.
More now. And, a million a year. It's probably coming up on 70 now. Yeah. And so when you think back to why this becomes a political issue that overwhelms every other thought, it seems to me that it must be rooted in trauma. Mm-hmm. That you got 65 million traumas, and I think it's about 40% have had more than one. I don't have those numbers up, but I think it's about 40% have had multiples. And if that's the case, then this is deep trauma, that's repeated trauma. And I do think that there is a cultural push, a cultural imperative to go down this path. So we've had a couple of interactions with a great woman, Melissa Aguilera, who couldn't be with us today because she's traveling right now. But we've had her on a couple of times, and we went down and did this thing we talk about often called a walk in Philly, a walk in Kensington, where we went down and just sort of met people to find out what was going on in certain parts of Philadelphia where it seemed like it was time to see a change. One of the people that we spent time with that day was Melissa Aguilera at Magnolia Women's Center. Now, if you go there, it is a really nice facility, and it is surrounded by 4 different abortion mills. I mean, she's got the only alternative operation there, and their mission is simply to tell people that there's an alternative. It is just to let you understand there's an alternative. Now, we did a couple of interviews with Melissa, and Tyler, if we could, let's play clip 3.
So, Gary, that's when I went home to research the topic. And when I opened the computer, this was the most chilling thing I saw on that screen. The first video that I came across is called The Silent Scream. And when I saw what was happening to that baby and the abortion right there just being performed, and the baby's mouth opening and closing and the little legs just pulling the legs up because he knew or she knew that something was not right. And I see a trash can full of babies that were just thrown there like garbage. When you start being so hard on yourself, because then the shame and the guilt and everything that comes after that, the grieving process, the anger that comes because I was lied to, and why would this guy push me to do this? So it was just I would say like a roller coaster of emotions that I was going through, because again I was faced with the reality of what I had done.
So it is an incredibly rare thing to have someone share with us their personal history like that, and the way it impacted them. And when I sat down and talked to Melissa, I was, obviously impacted by that. And what I find so uplifting and so inspiring is that she takes that trauma and she turns it into, I'm going to help. Yeah. And she's not judging people. She's not down there, casting aspersions on people. What she's done is created, with some help from her husband and the community, she's created a center where these women who are in a crisis pregnancy can go and they can sit down and be walked through some of the options. They can have a moment to think in a safe area where there isn't someone constantly pushing them. And one of the points that she made that I found, troubling, is that if she, other women have said this as well, when they're in the process of being advised by a Planned Parenthood or someone else that's in the abortion industry, they don't allow them to see the sonogram images because they don't want them to see that image and then connect to it and say, wait a minute, that's not just a clump of cells. That's actually a living, breathing person.
So one of my friends was absolutely a pro-choice parent, and was very willing to say, it's a woman's body. They can do what they want. Until his daughter got pregnant. She was married. Till his daughter got pregnant, and he saw the sonogram. And he immediately said, what am I doing? I can't be pro-choice. That's a baby. How can anyone want to kill that child inside their bodies? And no matter how difficult the situation is, to your point, you have choices. There are options. I know that there are a lot of people that are, single moms, and that's the crisis part. But to your point, there are many different organizations, yours included, that have places where people can go with those choices. But
no, a lot of our that's a beautiful story. I mean, I actually don't. I went to Melissa's grand opening at Magnolia, and Magnolia is one of our associate member organizations, and they do wonderful work. But a lot of what our mantra is, you have to meet women where they are. You don't know if a woman's post-abortive. You don't know what trauma she's gone through. I was at a conference. This never got out of my mind, but 60% of abortions are actually coerced. So it's either they're in a situation where the parents or the boyfriend or the husband are basically forcing that decision. 40% occur in situations of domestic violence, right? Or, God forbid now, unfortunately, sex trafficking. But more to the point, you meet the women where they are and you give them not just a choice, but an environment which is safe. The other statistics on ultrasound, because I know the Knights of Columbus, that's one of their big missions, is to put an ultrasound in every pregnancy resource center. 80% of women who see their child on a sonogram will elect to have their baby, even if they were bound and determined to abort. And I think the fact that Planned Parenthood and the abortion industry tends to de-emphasize that, again, goes against calling the medical centers, or that they're I mean, first of all, how would you diagnose an ectopic pregnancy without an ultrasound? Right. So that, again, inverts women's health care, abortion as health care. But the reality is, in those types of environments, women not only want a choice, but they want to know that someone's in their corner. So again, these sidewalk advocates, their job is to basically redirect them to that and to say, the first question, we were at this training last night, is, how do you know you're pregnant? Well, I did an at-home pregnancy test. Well, that's not conclusive. If you want to get a medical determination, there's a center, 4 steps away where you can get that. You can get an ultrasound. You can see your baby. Now, does that help us in terms of statistics and the pro-life? Of course, because they see the reality. They see the truth. And they want to but I think it's interesting you say that trauma point, Gary. The women either get help and they address that and they turn that into something beautiful, or like Martha Plimpton, they just stuff it down and they have to believe that what they did was right and a good choice for them, because you can't live with the opposite. This is going to be mansplaining, but I would think, especially as a woman, and a mother to just forfeit that and to be responsible for the death of your child. But again, it's I sound judgy, but our approach is not judgy. It's welcoming, and it's you have options, and please just take a moment, breathe, consider those options.
Well, one of the things in Melissa's clip that we just heard, I think that resonates the most is she was, through her trauma, she was concerned. She's concerned about others. And I think that that's her fight. But hearing her describe what happens to the baby as she's going through that process is very traumatic. And it just reminded me of Kermit Gosnell's space. He had a abortion clinic or facility in West Philadelphia. And when finally they were raided, they found babies in bags. They found babies in trash cans. They didn't say that they were little cells. They didn't say that they were just tissue. They were babies that he had in there. And when I saw that story, because I live in West Philadelphia, and I was there. Well, I was there when all of the raids were happening, watching it and unfold, and listening to Melissa's clip and listening to everything you're saying, Chris, and everyone is saying here. It's sad because no one thinks of the mother, right? Like what happens to them mentally and after they're having abortions. And to me, I think that that's where these abortion antagonist people miss the point, because they think that, oh, you just go, you have an abortion, it's done and it's over with. But what about the mother? Like mentally, what is happening to her? It just seems like they suffer in silence. And I'm glad that your organization is there for them, Chris, and I'm glad that Melissa's is there. But I would love to see and hear more about women post-abortion and understanding like where they are and are they getting help, because it has to be very traumatic. That clip that Gary just played and Tyler, it was very moving. And
the irony with Gosnell, we actually honored, I was at another organization, Pennsylvanians for Human Life. We honored J.D. Mullane, who was the reporter for the Bucks County Courier-Times, who broke the story, as well as Jim Wood, who was the detective. They weren't even after Gosnell for what was going on. And to your point, I mean, forget the child for a second. Women were dying.
Yeah.
You know, Kermit Gosnell was using unsterilized, subhygienic practices. They were hemorrhaging. They were septic. Babies were being killed on the table post-delivery. I mean, which used to be unthinkable. It used to be rational minds could say, all right, if you're delivered, you're a person, and this is murder. And now, if you see some of the congressional votes lately, that's now de rigueur, that you're entitled to a dead baby. You're not just entitled to your abortion. But to your point about Gosnell, I mean, it's something that, again, you see that deranged mind, and you whatever, it's this cognitive dissonance that I'm committed to women's health care, but I'm going to allow all that to go unregulated. They weren't even looking for what he was doing in terms of his medical practice. They were after Gosnell because he was overprescribing OxyContin and pain medication. And they happened to see all of these entrails and remnants, and I won't go into the gory details over lunchtime, but I mean, it makes your hair stand on end. And the crowning irony is that afterward they passed this legislation that basically, oh my God, mandates that abortion centers have minimum standards of hygiene, that they have doctors with admitting. Well, I remember having a discussion with one person saying, well, that would shut down every abortion center, you know, from here to Harrisburg. I said, good. You know,
down.
But to me, it puts the lie to, if you're genuinely concerned with women's choice and you're genuinely concerned with women's welfare, you cannot then just say, well, this is just collateral damage. This is an evil I'm willing to deal with. And as I said, the great transformation story with Gosnell was that Alpha Care, which is a pregnancy resource center, inhabits that building in West Philadelphia. Wow. I also grew up in Overbrook, so I hear you. Yeah, Our Lady of Lourdes Parish.
It is hard to contemplate the level of darkness that is in somebody like that is doing those things. And that's not the everyday stuff. I mean, I can't imagine the trauma of working in the industry. I can't imagine the trauma of going in every day and performing these and seeing what comes, as a result. It would be, I have to think that's another group that is traumatized. They've got to be. There's no way you could do that.
It's it's interesting. Like Chris has said, don't want to hopper on Kermit Gosnell, but in that facility, there were women working there. His wife, I think she was prosecuted as well.
Really?
Yeah, because, how could she as a woman? It's just hard to deal with, and it's hard to listen and see women suffering. And again, I say suffering in silence because there are women out there who had these abortions and they were lied to. Like your friend was told that, it just seems like no one is there in that space to help. And again, to your point, where, if they see the sonogram, if they, see, there's a good chance that they may come turn around. And I come back to Melissa's facility because Melissa just shared a story of a young woman that they were able to help, and that the young woman kept her baby. And it's a beautiful baby girl. I can't remember her name, but it's a beautiful baby girl, and they seem to be doing well. And I'm just glad that Melissa was there for her.
Yeah, and to your point, in terms of just completely abdicating the Hippocratic Oath or basic standards of care, one statistic, I was at a talk recently, I think somewhere between only like 12%, at most 12% of OBGYNs perform abortions. So if this is just standard medical practice, the people who know the reality, the biological reality of what they're doing, and do you say just suffer in silence and are doing their job? We had another speaker, Jules Green, who was a former abortion center worker who, like Abby Johnson, had this, conversion moment. And it's even more traumatizing because her story is, there's no sort of trauma or recovery outreach for former abortion clinic workers. So I said, this poor woman is like traveling the earth with the mark of Cain, that like this is this sort of unforgivable evil. And she just has this very plain spoken, I worked at an abortion center. I know exactly what goes on, and I know how horrific it is. So don't lecture me about what a beautiful thing to be celebrated abortion is.
This is so now we're in a position where we've had 65, 70 million traumas in the country, and it's clearly affecting everything. We always ask, why is it there's a cohort of women who we just can't reach with normal messaging, right? You can't this is going to harm your children. This is going to harm your family. This is going to harm you They don't care. This issue decides how they look at the world, how they vote, what actions they take. And it's I think this is part of the reason why, right? And so this industry that is big business. I mean, I don't know if people recognize how big Planned Parenthood is. It is not a small company.
No.
Planned Parenthood has revenues. The last time I looked now this goes back a couple of years, but they were $1.7 billion in revenue. They'll say, well, that's not all abortion. Well, that's true. Some of that is other procedures they perform, tests they perform, services provided. They have $2.5 billion in assets. So this is a real organization with substantial funding. And of course, we know that there's
lobbyists.
we know that there's an earmarked piece that comes out of the federal government because of the lobby, right?
Right, the lobbyists.
So they have enough money to go lobby. Now, there is no earmark set aside for UPMC or for CHOP or for Cleveland Clinic or Mayo. They just go and get paid for whatever they're doing. But for some reason, this organization has to have a specific set aside. And the way it's explained to me is, well, without them, women would have nowhere to go to get health care. Is that true? Are hospitals and doctors turning women away? I mean, what am I missing here?
No, it's not true. And in fact, the number of pregnancy resource centers, oddly enough, outnumber the Planned Parenthood centers. It's just that they're strategically deployed in urban areas with vulnerable women who lack resources. That's no accident. I mean, one of the things, you have to allow yourself some moments of levity with the battle you're in.
Yes.
Right.
But I remembered when whoever the current head of Planned Parenthood was a couple of years ago, because Margaret Sanger was a eugenicist and she was racist.
Yes.
There is no dispute about that. And there's this great documentary called The 1916 Project that Seth Gruber put together that traces the evolution, not just of that, but ties it to Nazi Germany. And like all of the parade of horribles that she was associated with. But it was funny with all of that, the director said, well, Planned Parenthood, we apologize for our past racist origins. I said, that's what you're apologizing for. Not the 70 million unborn American citizens of every color you just slaughtered. Okay. But to your point, Gary, on the funding, I was privileged to attend. There was before the big beautiful bill, there was a lobbying day to defund Planned Parenthood down in D.C. that from this area, my friend Marlene Downing, who runs statewide Susan B. Anthony Center, brought me down, and I got to talk to a representative from Ohio who, he's 100% pro-life, so it was, a nice echo chamber to be in. But what was interesting is when you pulled back the screen, something like $750 million is earmarked in federal funds for Planned Parenthood. And the genius of, just one of my favorite current phrases, a rising tide lifts all boats. We have a Dobbs decision that at least said there's no fundamental right Constitution. We have a president who's back in office, who's probably the most pro-life president we've ever had.
100%.
And now we have this impetus to look at government spending and waste and abuse and fraud. Whatever you think of Elon Musk, and the genius of it is this is straight budget reconciliation. This is not ideological. And that requires only a simple majority. Because as you said, 10% of that $750 million goes to lobbying.
Mm-hmm.
So what does that have to do with women's health care? Less than nothing.
So the federal government is funding Planned Parenthood lobbyists to lobby the federal
to come
government.
after people like us.
Yes.
So,
All right. So, of course, at the state issue, state level, this is a really big issue as well. And I wanted to get some insight from the legislature. So we're fortunate to be able to have State Representative Dave Zimmerman on, who has been on with us before. Not on this topic, but we appreciate Representative Zimmerman. We appreciate you joining us on the Conservative Voice.
Yeah, well, it's good to be on, and appreciate your efforts today. And sounds like it's a good program.
Well, thank you. And listen, before we go another tack, let's do something. We've got a couple of things. So Roe v. Wade was passed on January 22 of 1973, right? Mm-hmm. And it turns out. Back then, there was a popular musical group named Seals and Crofts. Tyler, let's play that first Seals and Crofts piece. Whoever doesn't remember them will remember this. Remember? Now, this just brings back great memories from the summers, hanging out, maybe going to the lake, to the beach. And this was a hit, right? This was a big hit.
This is the music of my older brothers and sisters.
Yeah, this put them on the map. So we're gonna wrap that one, and I'm gonna play one more Seals and Crofts song. Now, this is a song they released in 1974. Let's just jump right into the next one, Tyler, real quick.
Oh, unborn child, if you only knew just what your mama was planning to do. You're still clinging to the tree of life, but soon you'll be cut off before you get by. Oh, unborn child, beginning to grow inside your mama, but you'll never know. Oh, tiny bud that grows in the womb, only to be crushed before you can do. Mama, stop, turn it down. Go back.
My radio station did not play that.
I was
I
going to
know
say the
Summer
same
Breeze.
thing.
I don't know that one.
Everybody knows
How
Summer
that
Breeze.
flew under my radar for the past quarter century.
So that was 1974, a year after Roe v. Wade. It was not a big hit. It turns out that caused them a little trouble in the industry. But it damaged their popularity, and it stalled at number 66 on the Billboard Hot 100.
But it was true.
Right.
Well,
That's the problem.
yeah, and so you think about that. That was a long time ago.
Yeah.
But nobody remembers that song, right?
Yeah. No. Never heard it on the radio.
Right.
All right, let's go down one more path. So we're going to show how this rolls forward after 4 decades, okay? And Representative Zimmerman, please hang with us. We just bear with us here. Let's go with the last song.
I love my mother more than life itself, and that's a fact. I'd give it all if somehow I could just rekindle that. She never understands why I'm so overprotective. The more I work, the more I feel like somehow they're neglected. I want Kaya to go to college.
That's her
just
brother.
to say we did it. My child with Aaron would have been 16 any minute. So in some ways I feel like Kaya is the both of them. It's like he's Kaya's little angel looking over him. And I know
That is Nicki Minaj. Now, I happened to run into her in an airport once. I would not have expected, frankly, just not very impressive, okay? I mean, Nicki Minaj, 2014, 4 decades later, and so Kaya, who she references in this, is her brother. I want Kaya to go to college, and just to say we did it. My child with Aaron, the father, would have been 16 any minute. So in some ways, I feel like Kaya is the both of them. It's like he's Kaya's little angel looking over them. So I'm listening to this and I'm thinking, again, here's someone expressing their trauma and what happened in her case 16 years before that song was written in 2014. Obviously, she had a career she was building. She was in a lifestyle. I think that is a quick, just a quick message out to the world that this pain is there, and in her mind, that unborn child is now this angel sort of overwatching her brother. I mean, that is not what I expected to find with Nicki Minaj.
But she acknowledges the reality of what happened, and the post. I had heard that she was post-abortive, but her justification was, I had nothing to offer my child, and I remembered thinking, accept life. Right? And what an impoverished society we live in if there are women that actually think that I can't offer, we can take care of the resources. We can give you the options, but, and I'm not judging her. I mean, she made the decision she made and she acknowledged the truth of what happened. But that always stuck in me. So that's a powerful kind of codicil because I do remember her, what she had said about it.
Yeah, when you clip it out of the longer song, it's really a powerful little clip. And when you look at her album covers and stuff, I mean, she's deep in that, whatever that lifestyle is, and this is in her psyche. So turning back to Representative Zimmerman, again, thanks for joining us this afternoon. I know we caught you on short notice because this whole thing kind of evolved very quickly. But what are you seeing happening at the legislature, in the legislature at the state level? Is there, what's going on there? Is there a move to further advance and make abortion more common, or is there a fight against it? What's happening?
Yeah, so right now there's very little conversation on the abortion issue in Harrisburg. There is some bills. There's a heartbeat bill, for example, that was put out by Representative Borowitz. I put out the personhood bill, which identifies conception as the beginning, and the gist of that bill, just for everybody's information, was a situation out of Philadelphia where this young pregnant lady, very close to a due date, was at a baby shower, and she loaded up the gifts in a trunk and goes back to her apartment and parks on the street and was taking these gifts up to her apartment, and she's gunned down. And she dies, and in the process, though, the baby lives, but only for several hours. And then there was, they caught up to the individuals, and going through court, there was one murder trial, not two, just one.
Uh-huh.
And what this bill does is it identifies personhood at conception, so the judges can clearly, could have prosecuted for two murders in that case, and it allows for a judge to do that at any time with an aborted baby as well. So that bill's in place, and there's the Students for Life have been coming to the Capitol quite a bit in the last year, and that has become a powerful movement. I mean, they're unashamed to talk about the issue and run around to all the various representatives and talk about it and do rallies on the steps and the likes of that. So there is there's some really, really good things happening, and we had a rally that we've been doing every year since I'm in the legislature, and it grew from a couple of people on the steps inside the Capitol to the whole front of the Capitol. Those steps are filled with people, and the platform is down on the street. The street's closed, and so it's become the pro-life movement has become much more important. It's grown in size, and so there's a lot of emphasis being put on that. And you're hearing very little from the other side, but also in the House, the Democrats are in charge, so of course they're not allowing any legislation related to the issue to advance at all. So that's kind of where we are in Harrisburg.
I was there in the frozen rain last September, Representative Zimmerman. So my friend Mark Houck spoke, and your colleague Marla Brown did as well.
And we had Mark on the show some time ago to tell his story. So it's I think, Felice, you and I learned with Alessandra and Chris and the team is that a lot of folks that are very aggressive in the abortion movement, or at least it's very passionate for them, they don't really understand what's going on at the state level. They think that there's some impending doom.
They don't know the law.
They don't know the law. Some of them don't think that abortion's legal because Roe v. Wade fell.
Yep.
I mean, so do you hear that when you're talking to constituents? Are they expressing that, or what do you? Is that a bigger awareness that this is an impending loss? They won't be able to do it anymore.
Oh yeah, and especially right after Roe v. Wade was overturned. I mean, we got I got tons of emails, and we got phone calls, and my staff spent a lot of time in addressing that issue. But yeah, the belief was, and some of the media absolutely kind of sent out that message that it's now overturned and abortion is illegal, and the reality of it is nothing changed in Pennsylvania. We're a state that aborts up to 24 weeks, and we're still aborting up to 24 weeks legally.
Right. So the reason we wanted to have this conversation today is because we think it's important to talk about one of the most powerful issues in the Commonwealth, in the country, and to really just put the facts out there. What's really going on? I mean, the 35,000 abortions performed in Pennsylvania in 2023, and so this is not a small issue, and we know a lot of votes are driven by it. And so we thank you for coming on, Representative Zimmerman, and Chris Pushaw from the Pro-Life Union. Thank you for coming on. And, as we head out, I think we all have to think about what this issue means in our community. Who are we talking to about it? I'm not interested in judging anybody. This is a cultural issue way beyond me. There's some dark forces involved in this. I don't have a place to judge anybody. But I'm not afraid to have conversations about the issue that are factual and just explaining what it is. I'm not afraid to do that. And I won't stare at my shoes because I don't want to have it. Now, I don't spend much time on this. You know this because you're all talking to me all the time. Yeah. We're talking about economics and geopolitical stuff and all that kind of stuff. But you cannot ignore this. It is in the background of every discussion we have, and we just best not forget about it. And I do not think that simply ignoring it and pretending it isn't there, or misrepresenting your personal beliefs on it, is a way to get candidates elected or to get policy enacted. You can't just pretend it isn't there and then say, well, don't talk about it. It's always there.
Yeah.
Thank you all for joining us on The Conservative Voice. Felice Fine, Mina Quarles, Chris Pushaw, and Representative Dave Zimmerman. Thank you for your time this afternoon, and thanks to the listeners that joined us for this hour. We'll be back next Friday.
Thank you, Gary.
Thank you.
Thank you.